16-year-old Lee Hannah pushed herself gently through the zero-gravity corridor of Concordia Station, her black hair floating like silk around her shoulders. The crystalline walls sparkled with bioluminescent patterns that responded to her movement, creating ripples of blue and green light that followed her path. "Hannah, wait for me," called her friend QEX-Ta, a young R'Lani whose forearms struggled to maintain proper orientation in the weightless environment. The alien's chittering laughter echoed through the transparent tunnel as she spun helplessly. Hannah smiled and caught her friend's upper arm, steadying her with practiced ease. After 2 years living aboard the massive space station, she had become more graceful in zero gravity than most adults. Her movements were fluid, almost dance-like, as she guided QEX-Ta toward the observation deck. "You make it look so easy," QEX-Ta complained, her large compound eyes shimmering with embarrassment. "How do humans adapt so quickly?" "Practice," Hannah said simply, though she knew it was more than that. Humans seem to have a natural ability to adapt to any environment. It was one of the things that made the other species both admire and fear them. The observation deck was crowded with students from 12 different species, all gathered for the daily cultural exchange hour that Hannah had helped establish. She was officially just an exchange student, part of the Galactic Council's program to integrate humanity into the galactic community. But everyone knew she was much more than that. At 16, Hannah had already learned 7 alien languages. She could navigate the complex social customs of species that had been spacefaring for thousands of years before humans even discovered fire. She had a gift for finding common ground between beings so different they might as well have evolved on different planes of existence. "Today we're going to talk about art," Hannah announced to the mixed group of young aliens. She pulled out a small device that projected holographic images into the air. "Every species creates beauty in their own way." She showed them human paintings, Zorathai crystal sculptures, Threnody sound weaves, and Vexhai light poems. But more importantly, she showed them how each art form expressed the same basic emotions: love, loss, hope, wonder. She had a way of making the alien students see that despite their vastly different biologies, they all shared something fundamental. From the upper observation level, Council Enforcer Crixhal watched the young human with cold, calculating eyes. The Threnody was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and 4 arms that moved with mechanical precision. His species had been part of the Galactic Council for over 3,000 years. They prided themselves on logic and order. And right now, logic told him that Lee Hannah was a problem that needed to be solved. 3 days ago, while volunteering to help digitize old council archives, the girl had stumbled across classified communications that were supposed to be buried under 17 layers of encryption. Communications about something called Project Containment. The project was simple in concept. Humanity was growing too fast, learning too quickly, adapting too well to galactic society. In just 50 years since first contact, humans had gone from primitive planet-bound creatures to a species with colonies on 17 worlds. Their population was exploding. Their technology was advancing at an alarming rate. Their diplomats were too skilled, their traders too successful, their scientists too innovative. Most concerning of all, humans like Hannah were proving that the species could integrate seamlessly with galactic civilization while retaining their aggressive, unpredictable nature. She was living proof that humanity didn't need to be contained or controlled, they could be partners. The 12 ancient council species had ruled the galaxy for millennia. They had carefully maintained a balance of power that kept any one species from becoming too dominant. Humanity threatened that balance. So the council had quietly implemented Project Containment. Economic restrictions that looked like fair trade agreements. Military limitations disguised as peacekeeping measures. And when necessary, more direct interventions. Like the accident that had killed promising young human engineer Park Ji-woo 2 years ago. Or the system failure that destroyed the colony ship carrying humanity's best xenobiologists last year. Or the dozen other coincidences that had eliminated humans who were becoming too influential, too innovative, too dangerous to the established order. Now Hannah had seen the communications. She didn't understand what she was looking at yet, but she was intelligent. It wouldn't take her long to piece together the pattern. And once she did, she would tell her father, Dr. Kim Jae-ho, who worked for Earth's intelligence services. She would tell Captain Park Se-minute, who commanded a human deep space patrol. She would tell someone who could act on the information. Crixhal activated his communicator and sent a coded message to the station's maintenance chief, another Threnody named Velsak. The message was simple: the human girl must not leave this station. Down in the cultural exchange gathering, Hannah was wrapping up her presentation. The young aliens around her were animated, discussing how their different art forms could be combined to create something new. Azorothai was trying to show a Relani how crystal could be shaped to capture sound. Two Vexhai were experimenting with how their light poems might look when projected through Threnody prisms. This is what the galaxy could be, Hannah thought to herself, watching species that had been strangers becoming friends. This is what we're all working toward. She had no idea that 3 levels above her, Crixhal was finalizing plans to ensure she would never see another sunset. The station's artificial gravity was controlled by a complex network of generators and field projectors. During emergency drills, certain sections could be isolated and their gravity adjusted or even reversed to test the crew's response to system failures. It was a routine safety procedure that happened twice a month. Tomorrow's drill would be different. Section 7, where Hannah spent her free time reading in the quiet library, would experience a catastrophic malfunction. The gravity would suddenly reverse at maximum intensity, slamming anyone inside against the reinforced hull with lethal force. Another tragic accident. Another promising young life lost to the dangers of space travel. As Hannah said goodbye to her friends and headed toward her quarters, she felt a strange chill run down her spine. She paused and looked around, but saw nothing unusual. Just the normal bustle of station life, aliens of a dozen species going about their daily routines. She shook off the feeling and continued walking, humming softly to herself. Tomorrow she planned to finish her report on comparative mythology. She was excited to share her findings about how different species told remarkably similar stories about heroes who sacrificed themselves to save others. She had no way of knowing that in less than 18 hours, she would become one of those heroes herself. Dr. Kim Jae-ho sat in his small apartment on Lunar Base, staring at the official report for what felt like the 1000th time. The words blurred together as tears filled his eyes, but he forced himself to read every line again. His daughter Hannah was dead, killed in what the Galactic Council called a tragic system malfunction during a routine emergency drill. The report said the gravity generators in Section 7 had suddenly reversed, creating a force of 12 gs that slammed her against the station's hull. Death was instant, they assured him. She didn't suffer. It was just one of those terrible accidents that happen sometimes in space. But Kim Jae-ho wasn't just a grieving father. He had spent 15 years working for Earth's intelligence services before becoming a xenobiologist. He knew how to spot lies, and this report was full of them. He pulled up the technical specifications for Concordia Station's gravity systems on his computer. The generators were protected by 7 different safety protocols. For them to fail the way the report described would require all 7 systems to malfunction at exactly the same time. The mathematical probability was so low it might as well be impossible. More troubling were the timestamps. According to the report, the emergency drill began at 14:30 station time. The gravity malfunction occurred at 14:47. But Hannah's personal communicator showed her last message was sent at 14:52, 5 minutes after she was supposedly dead. Kim picked up his secure phone and dialed a number he had memorized but never thought he would use. Captain Park, this is Kim Jae-ho. We need to talk. 3 hours later, Kim sat across from Captain Park's a minute in a coffee shop deep in Lunar City's underground tunnels. Park was a small woman with sharp eyes and graying hair, but Kim knew she commanded one of Earth's most advanced deep space vessels. She was also one of the few people in the military who shared his suspicions about humanity's recent run of bad luck in space. Show me what you found, Park said quietly, glancing around to make sure they weren't being watched. Kim spread several data tablets across the table. Look at these timestamps. Hannah's communicator was still sending signals 5 minutes after the supposed gravity failure. But here's the interesting part. He pulled up another file. The station's external sensors recorded no unusual gravitational fluctuations during the time of the alleged accident. Park's expression darkened as she studied the data. Someone scrubbed the internal logs but forgot about the external monitoring systems. Exactly. But there's more. Kim opened another file, this one showing a star chart. 3 other promising human students have died in similar accidents over the past 5 years. All of them were exceptionally bright. All of them had access to high-level council databases through their studies. Park leaned forward. You think someone is targeting our best and brightest? Before Kim could answer, his phone buzzed with a message from Earth. It was from Choi Minute-ho, a specialist in artificial intelligence systems who worked at the Seoul Technology Institute. The message was brief: found something. Can't discuss over normal channels. Meet me in the usual place. 6 hours later, Kim and Park sat in a secure conference room in Earth's military headquarters, watching as Choi Minute-ho connected his equipment to the room's displays. Minute-ho was young, barely 30, but he was considered one of Earth's top experts in alien computer systems. "I've been working on recovering data from Hannah's personal AI assistant," Minute-Ho said, his fingers dancing over his keyboard. The council investigators claimed the device was completely destroyed, but they missed something. The main screen lit up with fragments of code and corrupted data files. Most of it was unreadable, but Minute-Ho had managed to piece together parts of a message that Hannah had been trying to send to her father just before she died. "Project Containment," Minute-Ho read from the screen. "Economic restrictions, military limitations, systematic elimination of human assets deemed threatening to council stability." Kim felt his blood turn to ice. She found something. That's why they killed her. Park was already on her feet, pacing the room like a caged animal. "How many others, Minute-Ho? How many other accidents can you connect to this Project Containment?" Minute-Ho pulled up another display, this one showing a timeline of human deaths over the past decade. 18 that I can confirm. All of them were people who might have elevated humanity's standing in galactic politics. Scientists, diplomats, engineers, even a few artists and philosophers. "They've been committing genocide," Park said quietly. "Slow, careful genocide designed to look like random accidents." Kim stared at his daughter's corrupted final message. She had been trying to warn Earth about the conspiracy when they killed her. Even at 16, she had understood the implications of what she had discovered. She had died trying to protect her species. "There's something else," Minute-Ho said, highlighting a section of recovered code. "Hannah managed to download part of the Project Containment files before they caught her. The data is heavily encrypted, but if I can break it..." "How long?" Park asked. "Give me 48 hours. Kim closed his eyes and thought about his daughter's final moments. She had been alone, scared, trying desperately to send a warning home while the station's systems turned against her. She had died believing that her sacrifice might save others. "Do it," he said. "Break the encryption. Find everything." Park was already activating her secure communicator. "I'm calling this in. President Lee needs to see this evidence immediately." As the three of them worked through the night, none of them realized they were being watched. In orbit above Earth, a Threnody surveillance vessel had detected the unusual communications traffic coming from the military facility. The ship's commander, Zalketh, sent a coded message back to the Galactic Council. "The humans are beginning to understand. Project Containment may be compromised. Recommend immediate escalation to Phase 2. The message was received by Crixhal, still aboard Concordia Station. He read it twice, then activated a secure channel to the other Council enforcers scattered throughout human space. "Begin eliminating secondary targets," he transmitted. "The human named Kim Jae-ho has become a problem. So has Captain Park Seminit. Handle them as you handled the girl." But Crixhal had made one critical error. He assumed that killing Hannah would end the investigation, just as killing other humans had ended previous investigations. He didn't understand that humans were different. They didn't just mourn their dead and move on. They remembered. They investigated. They planned. And when they discovered the truth, they would make the galaxy itself remember why that had been a mistake. The emergency meeting took place 3 miles beneath Cheyenne Mountain, in a room that had been built to survive nuclear war. President Lee So-young sat at the head of a long steel table, her face carved from stone as she listened to the evidence that would change everything. Dr. Kim Jae-ho stood at the front of the room, his voice steady despite the rage burning in his chest. Behind him, holographic displays showed data that Choi Minute-ho had spent 72 hours extracting from his daughter's corrupted files. "Ladies and gentlemen," Kim said to the assembled leaders of Earth's government and military, "we have been at war for 10 years. We just didn't know it." The room was silent except for the soft hum of air recyclers. Defense Secretary Yoon Tae-hyun leaned forward, his knuckles white as he gripped the table edge. Admiral Han Suk-jin, Earth's highest-ranking military officer, stared at the displays with cold fury building in his eyes. "Show them the timeline," President Lee said quietly. Minute-Ho activated the next display. Names and dates appeared in the air, connected by red lines that formed a web of death stretching back a decade. Park Ji-woo, killed 3 years ago when his research station accidentally vented atmosphere. He was 2 weeks away from perfecting a new type of faster-than-light engine. Another name appeared. Dr. Song Mi-young, died when her transport ship suffered navigation failure, and flew into a star. She was carrying data about weaknesses in Council military technology. Lieutenant Kwon Dae-jung, equipment malfunctioned during a routine patrol. He had discovered unauthorized Council surveillance devices in human space. The list went on. 18 names. 18 brilliant humans who had died in ways that looked like accidents but followed a clear pattern. Each death had removed someone who posed a threat to the Council's control over the galaxy. And finally, Minute said, his voice breaking slightly, Lee Hannah. Age 16. Died trying to warn us about what she had discovered. Captain Park Minute stood up from her seat. She had been tracking Council movements for weeks, and what she had found made her sick with anger. It's not just the murders, she said. We've identified 12 separate incidents where Council forces have sabotaged human colonies. Ship malfunctions that left thousands stranded. Supply convoys that got lost and left settlements to starve. They've been systematically weakening us while smiling to our faces. President Lee activated her personal tablet and pulled up a document that made several people in the room gasp. This is a copy of the original Project Containment Authorization, signed by all 12 Council species. The goal was simple: prevent humanity from becoming a major galactic power by any means necessary. The document was written in the cold, clinical language of bureaucracy, but its meaning was clear. Humans were to be contained, controlled, and if necessary, eliminated. The Council viewed them as a cancer that needed to be cut out before it could spread. Kim stepped forward again, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of every parent who had ever lost a child. They murdered my daughter because she was too smart, too kind, too good at bringing species together. They killed her because she represented what humanity could become. They killed all of them, added Dr. Lim Sung-ho, Earth's top xenobiologist, because they were afraid. Afraid that we would surpass them. Afraid that we would expose their crimes. Afraid that we would take our rightful place in the galaxy. Admiral Han stood up slowly, his weathered face showing no emotion. What are you recommending, Mr. President? Lee So-young looked around the room at the faces of Earth's leadership. Some showed anger, others showed grief, but all showed the same iron determination that had carried humanity from caves to the stars. I'm recommending that we show the Galactic Council what happens when you mistake human restraint for human weakness, she said. They wanted to contain us. Instead, they freed us from any obligation to play by their rules. Defense Secretary Yoon pulled up tactical displays showing human fleet positions throughout the galaxy. Our forces are already in position. We've been quietly moving ships for months while investigating these deaths. We can strike every major Council world simultaneously. No, Admiral Han said firmly. We're not going to strike them. We're going to erase them. The room fell silent. Even President Lee looked surprised by the Admiral's words. Han activated a holographic display that showed technologies most people in the room had never seen before. For the past 20 years, we've been developing weapons and defensive systems in secret. Not because we planned for war, but because we knew that someday, someone might force war upon us. The displays showed ships that seemed to bend light around themselves. Weapons that could disassemble matter at the quantum level. Defensive systems that could stop any known attack. Technologies that made Council fleets look like wooden sailing ships. We kept these secret, Han continued, because we believed in peaceful coexistence. We thought that if we showed too much strength too quickly, other species would fear us. My daughter believed that too. Kim felt tears running down his face as he realized what the Admiral meant. Hannah died believing in their capacity for goodness, Han said. She died trying to build bridges. They repaid her trust with murder. They repaid our restraint with genocide. President Lee stood up and walked to the window that showed the Earth turning slowly in space. Millions of lights sparkled on the night side of the planet. Cities full of people who still believed that the galaxy was a safe place where different species could live together in peace. They killed our children, she said softly. They killed our hope. They killed our faith in the future we were building together. She turned back to face the room, and her expression was harder than the mountain around them. So we're going to kill their civilization. Not their people, their civilization. We're going to tear down everything they built and make sure they can never threaten another species again. The vote was unanimous. Operation Erasure would begin at dawn. The Galactic Council expected human warships to come screaming out of hyperspace, guns blazing and missiles flying. They prepared their fleets for the kind of brutal, straightforward battle they believed matched humanity's primitive nature. Defense platforms powered up around 12 Council homeworlds. Ancient warships that had kept peace for millennia moved into position. They were not prepared for what actually happened. Human vessels appeared simultaneously in orbit around every major Council world, but they didn't attack. The ships were sleek and dark, almost invisible against the star field. They simply arrived and waited, like silent judges preparing to deliver a verdict. Admiral Han Suk-jin stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the Threnody homeworld turn slowly beneath them. The planet's orbital cities sparkled like jewels against the black of space. Massive space stations housed billions of beings. Communication arrays stretched between worlds like a web of light and information. "All ships report ready, Admiral," said his communications officer, Lieutenant Bae Haijin. Han nodded slowly. He thought about Lee Hannah, the bright 16-year-old girl who had died believing in peace and friendship between species. She had spent her short life trying to build bridges. The Council had repaid her kindness with murder. "Begin Phase 1, he ordered. Across the galaxy, human ships released clouds of microscopic machines that looked like space dust to Council sensors. The nanites were too small to trigger defensive systems, too numerous to track individually. They spread through space like an invisible plague, seeking specific targets. On the Threnody homeworld, Communication Director Velnash noticed the first signs of trouble when his deep space array went silent. He frowned at his display screens, trying to understand what was happening. "Sir," called his assistant, "we're losing contact with Defense Platform 7. "Technical problems," Velnash muttered, activating repair protocols. But then Platform 12 went dark. Then Platform 3. Within minutes, every defensive installation around the planet had simply stopped working. The platforms weren't destroyed. They were still there, solid and intact. But every electronic system inside them had been reduced to inert metal and plastic. The nanites had dissolved every circuit, every processor, every piece of technology that made the platforms more than empty shells floating in space. Captain Park Seminit commanded the human task force at the Zorathai system. She watched through her ship's sensors as the alien species' pride and joy, a massive orbital shipyard that had been under construction for 2 centuries, began to come apart. The nanites didn't attack the structure itself. Instead, they targeted the molecular bonds that held the advanced alloys together. Metal turned to dust. Crystalline supports crumbled into powder. In the space of an hour, a monument to Zorathai engineering became a cloud of debris. "Captain," reported her tactical officer, "they're trying to evacuate the shipyard." "Let them," Park said coldly. "We're not interested in killing people. We're killing their ability to threaten others." The Zorathai evacuation ships fled to their homeworld, carrying stories of technology that seemed like magic. Entire space stations dissolving into nothing. Weapons that could unmake matter itself. Ships that appeared and disappeared like ghosts. On the Council's Central Command world, Supreme Coordinator Thexval watched in growing horror as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Every Council world was under attack, but it wasn't an attack that anyone understood. "They're not targeting our people," reported his military advisor, a scarred veteran named Kalmesh. "They're targeting our infrastructure. Everything we've built in space is just disappearing." "What about our fleets?" Thexval demanded. Kalmesh's expression was grim. "Gone. Not destroyed, gone. Our sensor readings show empty space where our ships used to be." The truth was even more terrifying than the Council realized. Human quantum computers, hidden from galactic knowledge for decades, had mapped every artificial structure in Council space. Every ship, every station, every piece of technology was catalogued and marked for removal. Dr. Kim Jae-ho sat in the command center on Lunar Base, watching the systematic dismantling of galactic civilization. Screens around him showed the real-time destruction of everything the Council had built over thousands of years. "The Vex High Communication Network is down," reported one technician. "Rilani trade routes have been severed," called another. "All Threnody military assets in the outer sectors have gone dark." Kim felt no satisfaction watching the destruction. His daughter was still dead. The other murdered humans were still gone. But at least no other bright young person would die because they learned too much or showed too much promise. "Sir," said Choi Minute-ho from his position at the intelligence station, "we're intercepting Council communications. They're trying to surrender." Kim looked up at the main display, where a message from the Council was being translated in real time. It was from Supreme Coordinator Thexval himself, begging Earth to stop the attacks and negotiate. "Tell me," Kim said quietly, "did they listen when Park Ji-woo begged for his life as his research station lost atmosphere? Did they negotiate when Dr. Song Mi-young's ship was flying into that star? Did they show mercy when my 16-year-old daughter tried to send a warning home?" Minute-ho was quiet for a moment. "No, sir. They didn't." "Then we don't listen to them either." On his flagship, Admiral Han received the surrender offer and deleted it without reading it completely. The Council had spent 10 years murdering humans in secret. They had smiled and signed treaties while planning genocide. They had killed children to maintain their power. Continue the operation, he ordered. I want every piece of Council technology erased from existence. Every ship, every station, every communication array. Leave them with nothing but the dirt under their feet. Lieutenant BAE looked up from her station. Admiral, some of the Council worlds are trying to evacuate their populations to the surface. Good, Han replied. We want them to survive. We want them to live on their worlds with no way to reach the stars. We want them to remember what happens when you mistake human mercy for human weakness. Across the galaxy, the greatest civilization in known history was being systematically erased. Not through war, but through the methodical removal of everything that allowed them to exist as a spacefaring species. The Council had killed one human girl too many. The last Council emergency session took place in a bunker carved deep into the bedrock of the Threnody homeworld. The chamber that had once hosted representatives from 12 mighty civilizations now held only 3 frightened beings huddled around a flickering hologram projector. Crixhal, the enforcer who had murdered Lee Hanna, sat at the head of the cracked stone table. His pale blue skin had turned almost white with fear. Around him sat the final survivors of what had been the galaxy's ruling council, Velmor of the Zorathai and Qexdan of the Rilani. Status report, Crixhal said, though he already knew what they would tell him. Velmor's crystalline features reflected the dim emergency lighting as he spoke. The Vorthak hegemony is completely cut off. No orbital assets remain. The next reunion has been reduced to pre-spaceflight technology. The others. He trailed off, unable to finish. Gone, Qexdan whispered. All gone. 9 civilizations that ruled the stars for thousands of years, reduced to prisoners on their own planets. Above them, the bunker shook as another piece of orbital debris crashed into the planet's atmosphere. The Threnody had built the most advanced space defense network in the galaxy. Now it was falling from the sky in burning chunks. Crixhal activated the emergency communicator, trying once again to reach Earth. For 3 weeks, his desperate calls had been met with silence. Finally, a human voice responded. This is Dr. Kim Jae-ho speaking for Earth. The voice was calm, almost conversational. Crixhal felt a chill run through his body. He remembered that name. Kim was the father of the girl he had killed. Dr. Kim, please, we must negotiate. The destruction must stop. We can reach an agreement. No, Kim interrupted. There will be no negotiation. No agreement. No mercy. Crixhal's hands shook as he gripped the communicator. You're committing genocide. You're destroying entire civilizations. Kim's laugh was cold as winter space. Genocide? We haven't killed a single council citizen. Your people are alive and well on their homeworlds. They'll live long, happy lives breathing their own air and eating food grown in their own soil. They just won't be traveling to other worlds anymore. You can't do this. We are the Galactic Council. We have ruled. You ruled through murder, Kim said, and now his voice carried the weight of a father's grief and rage. You killed my daughter because she was too smart, too kind, too hopeful about what different species could accomplish together. You killed 18 of our brightest minds because you were afraid of what humanity might become. The bunker shook again as more debris fell from orbit. Emergency lights flickered and went out, leaving only the pale glow of the communicator to light their faces. We offered you friendship, Kim continued. We sent our children to learn from you, to build bridges between our peoples. You repaid that trust by murdering them in secret. Crixhal tried once more. It was necessary. You were growing too fast, becoming too powerful. The balance had to be maintained. The balance, Kim repeated slowly. Yes, I understand about balance. For 10 years, you killed our people and we didn't know it. Now we know. So we're restoring the balance. Captain Park Saminet's voice joined the transmission from her flagship in orbit. You want to know what balance looks like, Crixhal? It looks like this. You took our future, so we took yours. You silenced our voices, so now yours are the only ones left in a very quiet galaxy. Please, Crixhal begged, all pretense of dignity gone. Our children had nothing to do with this. Our people are innocent. So was Hannah, Kim replied. So were all the others you murdered. Did their innocence stop you? The communicator crackled with static. Above them, the last functioning satellites were being systematically erased by human nanites. Soon, even this conversation would be impossible. You called us primitive, Kim continued. You called us violent and unpredictable. But you never understood what we really were. We are the species that remembers. Every kindness, every cruelty, every friend, every enemy. We remember them all. Velmore leaned forward, his crystalline voice desperate. What do you want from us? How can we make this stop? You can't, said Admiral Han Suk-jin, joining the transmission. This isn't about what we want. This is about what you chose. You chose to be our enemies in secret. You chose to kill our children. You chose to try to destroy our species slowly, quietly, hoping we would never notice. But we did notice, Kim added. And now everyone will remember what happens when you make that choice. The transmission began to break up as the last communication satellites fell silent. Through the static, Crixhal could hear Kim's final words. My daughter died believing in a future where all species could live together in peace. You killed her for that belief. You killed that future. So we're making sure you can never kill anyone else's future again. The communicator went dead. The bunker was plunged into darkness except for the faint glow of emergency power. Above them, pieces of their civilization continued to rain down from the sky. Crixhal sat in the darkness, understanding at last the true magnitude of what they had done. They hadn't just killed 18 humans over 10 years. They had killed humanity's faith in peaceful coexistence. They had killed the restraint that kept Earth's advanced technology hidden. They had killed the mercy that might have saved them. 1 year later, human colonies bloomed like flowers across former Council space. On New Concordia, built in the exact orbital position where the original station had been, human children played in zero-gravity gardens while their parents worked to build a better galaxy. Dr. Kim visited the memorial wall every day, where the names of the 18 murdered humans were carved in black stone. At the center was a holographic image of his daughter, frozen forever at 16, her hand extended in a gesture of friendship that would never again be answered. Did we do the right thing? Asked Captain Park one day as they stood together before the memorial. Kim looked out at the stars, where human ships now sailed alone through the endless dark. We did the only thing we could do. We made sure it could never happen again. In the ruins of the Council worlds below, alien children looked up at the night sky and saw no moving lights among the stars. They would grow up knowing that their ancestors had reached too far and grasped too much. They would tell stories of the species that had offered friendship and been repaid with murder. They would remember the price of that choice. And in the silence between the stars, the galaxy itself would remember the lesson written in the ashes of the greatest civilization it had ever known: some lines should never be crossed.